All right, hello again. Day two is down. So I'm just going to go through my solution to day two. So it was, evaluating passwords, whether they meet the password policies, different policy in day one and day two. Here is my code. Not all that interesting. Day two, still pretty simple. So just a couple things I'll point out. I'm using this extension method called parse lines. I actually wrote this extension method on this day. I'll get to that in a second. But basically split up the input into each lines, and I got this parse input function, which basically takes each line and just parses it into the interesting bits. I didn't have any extension method written that helps me with this, so I just did an input.split. And when I'm presented with a string like this that has a few interesting pieces that I want and then some random characters in between them, usually what I do is I just do a split and I just specify as split characters all the junk between the interesting bits. So there's a dash, there's a space, there's a colon. So this will remove all of those, remove any empty entries between them, and leave me with the four bits that I care about. Convert them to ints, convert it to a char, and then I return them in a tuple. I use C# tuples a lot in my Advent code. It's just super convenient, so I don't have to create another class with four properties. I'm just going to return a tuple with the four bits I care about. And then back up here to the parse lines. So how I originally wrote it, right, is something like this. And I have an extension method that splits it up into lines that I've had forever. And then I'll do a link select method. I pass in my parse input, right? And the link select method basically takes an array of some type and converts it to an array of some other type. So in this case, it takes the array of strings and calls this parse input to turn it into an array of these tuples. But this .lines.select passes a function. I find myself doing this a lot, enough that I think creating a little extension method to just make this a little bit more concise. And all this extension method does is exactly that, .lines.select, pass it in the parser function. I find that a little bit more concise, arguably a little bit more expressive. So now I got my array of tuples. I'm just going to call my isPasswordValid, which does the check of the password validation rules, and I count how many of those are true. That's part one. Part two, basically the exact same thing, only have a different password validation function that does the part two rules. When I first wrote this, I could not remember what the exclusive OR operator in C# was, so I did some ugly thing with ands and ors, and then I just rewrote it to use the exclusive OR operator. And I think that's it. That's all the interesting bits here. That's part two. See you guys tomorrow.